6 weeks ago or so. So nice to see you again. But Sharmily, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. Everyone, we are the last panel, but not the least. So please hang on because this panelists have a lot to share and teach us. So this panel is called On the Ground Innovations in Distribution. So I'm just going to introduce all of our panelists with a couple of minutes. So with us, we have Kendra Richardson, who is the founder of Funky Town Fridge. Kendra is an activist, a leader, and a native of Fort Worth, Texas. She's a graduate of Stephen F. Austin State University with a bachelor's in sociology and cultural anthropology. And we'll hear a little bit more about her work. Amanda Hege, who is the regional nutrition manager, USDA and SNAP-Ed, Second Harvest Food Bank of Northwest North Carolina. Amanda currently serves as a faculty member at Appalachian State University and serves on the board of several organizations. Amanda has conducted the first study of its kind, evaluating food and housing insecurity of students at a large land grant university, and that's the USDA term, so you can look that up a little bit if you wanted to learn more. And we also have Hernan, as Dr. Bob just mentioned. We had just visited him, so Hernan Colmenero is a director for the farm program at IDEA Public Schools, a nonprofit network that operates public charter schools in Texas. And he oversees the mixed vegetable production of 12 schools in El Paso, Austin, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Baton Rouge, and the Rio Grande Valley. So not just in Texas, but also in Louisiana, and has developed curricula to educate children on agriculture and food systems. He is a USDA Kika de la Garza Fellow. So to learn more about their rich background, you can also look at the bios, and you can, that will share a little bit more than what I've just shared with you. So panelists, if you are all ready, I'm going to start with Kendra. So Kendra, what are some hunger and nutrition issues that are unique in your community in Fort Worth?
Well, in the communities that we serve, we call them food apartheid communities or neighborhoods. There are no grocery stores there. And if there are grocery stores, they're at least, 15 or so miles away from where people live. So then they have to travel. And if there are grocery stores, it's probably high. The food is probably high to where they cannot afford it. And so, yeah, that's the main thing that I can think of. There's really no options, honestly, for food around here, besides the little grocery stores that are spared out throughout the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Kendra. And I'm just going to jump around with the other panelists and come back and sort of ask you each questions that are kind of a little bit unique to you as well. So Amanda, many college students rely on their school for food, but during the pandemic, that resource was no longer available. So I just wanted to ask you, how have you seen universities pivot to continue to provide for students?
Well, that's such a great question, and one that really was faced at college and university campuses, but then also what we've already heard from with students at elementary schools and high schools as well. How are we going to feed these individuals when they're no longer physically coming in person? It's so great to be with this group today and hear more from others about hunger. The big thing that really was a success in our community and working with college and universities here was partnerships, and really the key importance of developing partnerships between the college and university and then that community, but then also partnerships with where your university students might actually be coming from, might live. It could be out of state, because many of our students didn't come back to campus. And so they stayed living at home. Our university is in North Carolina, so maybe they were living at home in Georgia or Illinois. So helping to connect those students with community partners for food access and housing was really key. And then our dining services, as many did, transition to more takeout options, and also partnered with Uber to do some delivery services as well to ensure that students were still being fed, even though they weren't physically coming into the dining hall.
That's a lot in terms of being able to think about not just in the community, but where their home communities are as well. So that's a lot of planning thinking about each individual person's needs. Hernan, I'm going to jump to you now. Can you tell us a little bit about Idea Farm program and its impact on child nutrition?
Yeah, so the impact is quite large, right? We have a lot of impact on their nutrition, but also socio-emotional learning, mental health, emotional well-being. So, you know, there have been several students. I started off as a farmer, and just the stories that students would come and tell me about how it's impacting them emotionally, and in the lunchroom with the difference it's making in the food that they're eating. It just goes, you know, beyond what I can give in, you know, 2 minutes here. In addition to that, though, you know, we have two commercial hydroponic facilities, and these are producing leafy greens for the cafeteria. So at those campuses, students are consuming nothing but the leafy greens that are produced or grown at that campus. And so they were harvested that same morning usually. And so it's extremely fresh. They're getting extremely high quality produce that the students may not otherwise have access to, because we serve about 90% of our students are from low-income communities. So what we've done is we gave students cameras, and we had them take pictures. It was essentially a photo voice project, and they took pictures throughout the course of 1 year. And we came up with this photo book that just has it's very insightful into the perspective of students and how it's impacting their refrigerators at home, or their situations at home rather, with food and their just emotional connection to the farm at their campuses. So we decided this year, that was last year, what we decided is to actually measure the differences that students are, the difference in eating patterns, rather, using the SPAN survey that was developed by UT Health. And in addition to that, we're also just measuring socio-emotional learning to see, in a quasi-experimental study, to see if there's how much change is going on from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So we can actually have some concrete data versus just anecdotes from the students themselves.
That's a really great idea. I mean, in terms of you're being really rigorous about the program in terms of adding evaluation and adding both aspects in terms of, you know, photo voice as well as actual data collection. So this is great that you're using you know, different methods. So it's interesting. It's really great. So coming back to you, Kendra, I know you were just giving us a little bit of like the outs, you know, in terms of giving the context of Fort Worth and what type of, you know, availability really looks like there. And I just wanted to see if you could expand a little bit about just the concept of Funky Town Fridge and how it makes food available, and, you know, what the benefits are in terms of also, you know, possibly minimizing waste as well.
Oh yeah, okay. So I literally just left when we had a bus of kids come and fill them up. So I run a community solidarity fridge. It is a refrigerator that is placed outside of a private owned building, and it is open and accessible 24/7. So it's literally just free food all the time, anytime. And so we encourage people to come and bring whatever that they have. We try to encourage them to like look in their pantries first, or, you know, their bathroom closets, and find the foods or the canned goods that they know they're not going to eat and bring it. So that's a way of eliminating food waste. And a sense of environmentalism as well, right? And so we also have it's basically like a free store. We also have like a little bag section where people can put bags in after they fill it up. So then people can go and they can get bags, and then they can shop as they want. That way you're not wasting the bags or wasting the plastic. We keep sinks on the side of every fridge with paper towels. So we serve a lot of houseless people, especially at our South Side fridge. So then we keep the sink filled. So they always have fresh water to either drink or wash their hands or handle whatever kind of business they can at the little station we have there. So yeah, it's a community solidarity fridge in food apartheid communities in Fort Worth, Texas. And those are communities that don't have any grocery stores, or the grocery stores that were there, they're completely shut down, empty, and just there. So people don't have access to the food or access to healthy foods. They don't have access to produce, or either can't afford produce or fresh fruit. And so Funky Town Fridge is just a way of giving them that access and remaining as accessible as possible. And that's like the number one thing we try to do when we put out more fridges. So that's it. That's us.
No, it's also like a way to give people dignity, right? In terms of having the food available in a way that they can just walk through, and then the bags and.
So
be able
we're
to
not a
go.
nonprofit, so there's no papers you have to sign. There's nothing that you have to do. Like you can literally just go up and take the food. And if we're there, we just say, hey, have a good day. Sometimes the houseless people like to sit and talk to us and tell their stories because sometimes they just want somebody to talk to. Like it's literally just community showing up for community. So there are no questions asked. Nobody has to give us a social or how many people live in their household or tell us how much they make or whatever their job is. You just, are you hungry? Here's 3 fridges now. Down Berry, go find you one and go get you some food and go eat. It's that simple.
And just to piggyback on what you said about there's not food available. Would you call it also a swamp in terms of there's food, fast foods and those types of things? Are you saying there's like no foods available in that setting? Just to give others a little bit more context of the setting.
Yeah, so we're trying to change the language around people who don't have access and the stigma, right? You change the language, you change the stigma. This thing you don't have the language to put people in boxes the way that we have for so long. So we call them food apartheid, and it's a South African word, and it does not blame the people for the conditions that they live in, for the neighborhoods that they live in. We know that there are systems put in place for these people to live in these neighborhoods, to not have the access and the resources they need to build their quality of life, right? And so food apartheid is essentially a food desert. It's a place where there are no grocery stores within miles for people to be able to walk, right? Or even drive. And now gas is like $3. $3. My God, gas is high. So, people don't have, gas to drive, or some people are choosing between gas and eating. So this gives them a way to, have access to food and not have to go so far. Dang, I forgot what I was saying. So yeah, that's what it is. That's what it does. And so a food swamp would be where you go to a neighborhood and there's nothing but like fast food restaurants, and there's nothing but gas stations, and they say liquor stores on every corner. And that's essentially what is in these neighborhoods that we go to. And if you drive down Berry, you could drive down Berry on Fort Worth and hit every fridge in Fort Worth. You can see 2 grocery stores down the whole street. This street goes through the whole entire city. And you can see where the poverty lines are because the city is separated by them. So once you get there, you can see that there are only about 2 grocery stores within the miles of going down Berry and like going to every fridge, right? And so we just want to be able to give them like the access to those foods to produce their quality of life. That's it. And so there are no grocery stores. It's only fast food grocery stores. Now they're building all kinds of department stores and stuff like Ross and TJ Maxx. So there's no access to food, honestly, truly, just period. But there's access to everything else that will lower their quality of life. That makes sense. So that's what you would call a food swamp. Sorry, didn't mean to go.
No, it's okay. I also like that you're helping us define things, because you're also talking about in food apartheid instead of the 2 ways that we've talked about it here, which is, swamp or desert. And just to get a quick, just a one, how far away are these donations coming from? I know you were saying in that area there's no food, but how far away are people who are giving food, or where you're collecting from?
I mean, we've had people from California send us food boxes. We've had people from Australia send us money and visit our website. It's been a crazy year. So we've gotten so much attention. There are literally people from everywhere either sending us food. We have an Amazon wish list. So every week there's something in our PO box. And not even donations. Like sometimes artists like to draw us thank yous and stuff like that. And so we keep a PO box so that, we can build a community, not just here in the city, but abroad. And that's what's happening. And we want to, build on top of that as well. So people from all over send food from our Amazon wish list. I remember specifically a lady, especially, I want to say during the winter storm, people were sending just like food boxes so we can keep the fridges filled, because we were also handing out free hot meals. and blankets and stuff, because there were a lot of houseless people that were left out in the snow. So we were kind of doing two things at one time, and we would depend on those people to just like send us food that we could just like throw in the fridge real quick, and then we can go out later in the day and, you know, hand out hot meals and blankets and stuff. So all over the place, people from everywhere, especially the city. Like, it's really being the city I knew growing up. So I appreciate it all.
Great in terms of innovations and you're saying the people you've attracted. Amanda, I'm going to piggyback off the last question that I asked Kendra, and just ask you a little bit about solutions for rural communities or best practices that you have seen, because I know you've served in couple of different rural communities.
Well, and similar to what Kendra said, transportation, cost of gas, where we are located. And so where I'm physically located is the very northwest tip of North Carolina and the Appalachian Mountains. And so transportation is a challenge for a number of reasons. One, having it to our quality of our roads. As the crow flies, it might be about 5 miles, but it still could take an hour to get from many of our communities to the nearest store, including a gas station or a Dollar General, let alone a full-scale grocery store. So food apartheid is very real where we are as well, and it may look just a little bit different in the Appalachian Mountains. And so one solution that we came up with, and I'm actually going to share my screen and share a picture, is a refrigerated locker model. This is located at the only location that's available, which is an elementary school in this community in rural Appalachia. So in this community, there's an elementary school, there's a fire station, and there's a church. And so the elementary school is where this is located. It's accessible 24/7. People place a food order either over the phone or on an app on their phone. And these are refrigerated, frozen, and shelf-stable lockers. They can come at any time to access their food. And the main goal here was to address transportation barriers within the community, but then also the healthy food access component. So predominantly the food that's put into these lockers are locally sourced fresh vegetables. So we're also providing an income for farms in this community, also locally sourced dairy products. And so we're partnered with a couple different dairies here, locally sourced cheese and eggs as well. And so majority, about 90% of the food that goes through these lockers is purchased from our own land, which was a really big priority of ours as well, paying full price for that with some grant funds through No Kid Hungry and Share Our Strength. And so the main goal here was addressing that transportation, healthy food access, but then also providing a market opportunity for our local farms as well.
Finding solutions in different settings. Thank you for, we're able to see the two urban and the rural settings. Similar idea of perishable foods and how do you still make it accessible to families. I'm going to jump to Hernan now. Can you talk a little bit about we just talked about farms and the farm access, this farm has been very successful to date and has grown over 70,000 pounds of food. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what's led to its success and impact on the community.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that makes us have relative success is that we're really including students as part of the whole model, right? Not only are they actually growing it, preparing the soil, fertilizing, planting the seeds, starting them, and maintaining them, keeping track of them over the course of the plant's lifetime. They're actually harvesting, learning about food safety, the importance of that, going into the cafeteria and delivering it to the cafeteria managers, and then consuming it, right? The only key element that's missing is the decomposition part, where we'll bring it back. It's just we don't have that capacity right now. Nevertheless, for them to see most of that cycle is crucial. And partnering with other institutions, I think, is key. But beyond that, sort of filling in the gaps there, using curriculum that has been established and then building on that. So we use the Junior Master Gardener curriculum, which serves as an excellent foundation for everything else we do. And then we incorporate a lot of these food system issues and solutions so that students are learning what they're doing and the impact, the global impact that these local solutions can have. So that's one. Our regenerative practices. We, as a gentleman before us was discussing, sustainable agriculture is what needs to happen in order for us to continue feeding ourselves for sustainably, right? And have these sustainable diets. And these practices are what have allowed our farms to be, to have continued growing over the last, our oldest farm is about 12 years now. And really focusing on that school integration, because although the farm is outside, sometimes that, you know, it's on school grounds, but sometimes there isn't a clear connection to what is happening in the classroom. And so constantly building that bridge is key, because principals will come and go, farmers will come and go, and there's turnover in the campus employees. And so that relationship needs to be just nurtured year after year. That's something that we cannot take for granted. So I think that's why we have been able to have success at our existing farms and every farm that we've launched since then, year after year.
I know what you were saying is like the staffing is part of the issue, but I was wondering, yeah, if you're seeing themes that are present in terms of what makes it successful across all of the campuses that have launched them, if you could speak a couple of lines about that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll stick to the relationship piece because it's so crucial. For example, some principals may not be, like if they're coming in and the farm is already there, they may not be totally enthused about a farm, or may not see the potential rather that a farm can be as an outdoor classroom. And so having those discussions and being educators to a certain extent on the campus for the staff, not in addition to the students, right? So that they can see the potential in how this benefits students. If we are just able to do that across the board, we will at least be at a grade B. And there's just no getting around that.
And there's a sustainability part of it too, right? In terms of the food is being used in the cafeteria. It's being bought locally. I mean, it's basically that this farm is a commercial endeavor in a way to be able to be a sustainable project, right?
Yeah, we've essentially shortened the food system for it to occur within a day or two that students are harvesting and consuming, right?
Thank you, Hernan. So jumping back to Kendra, I'm just going to ask you, can you talk about the mutual aid aspect of things, and what is the important cornerstone of that in terms of how you guys have strategies, or in terms of, principles that bring it together?
So we're not a nonprofit, we're an LLC. We got to a point where we had to choose an entity, so we ended up going ahead and choosing an LLC. And I've been just, watching different fridges and how they operate in that aspect as far as like mutual aid. But mutual aid really is essentially a community just showing up for each other. Like as Black people, we have done this. That's what raising a child in the village is. Like you have one single parent that you grew up with, yes, but as soon as she needs help, here comes everybody else, your mommy, your auntie, your cousin, you know what I'm saying? Like giving what they can to get you where you need to be, right? And so that's what community is, showing up for each other. We still have Sunday dinners at my grandmother's house, and people still just come from outside on the street and walk in the house, and they get a plate and they go home full. So it's essentially what that is. And so that's how we chose to do it, and it's working so far, and just like operating in mutual aid. But that's what the definition is. So people do mutual aid in all kinds of ways and practice it in all kinds of ways. It's just now having a name and a language, right? Like now people can try to explain it and find ways, for other people to understand what's going on. So we have a community fridge, right? So people can just take food to the fridge to try to keep money in case we ever have to go grocery shopping, just again, because usually when we do, it's like $300 a day. So we sell like t-shirts and hats, and we keep a Patreon. And so that's just one way we try to like keep funds in, but usually people know that. Everybody that donates to us knows that. It's not like something that we try to be as transparent as possible all the time, as much as possible. So it's not like a secret, but they all know. And so I think it makes them want to show up more. And so, especially people that directly go to the fridge, it's like in their routines now, like they put it in their own budgets when they go shopping. And so it's just cool to see the different ways that people show up for these fridges and, you know, for these people in these neighborhoods. So that's what mutual aid is, and that's how we operate in it. We agreed as a team to become an LLC. It was just a communal effort. We all sat down, had a conversation, went through all the pros and the cons and the politics as to why we would choose to do so. And we all align with it. And that's us, Funky Town Fridge. And
So as you expand or have more, you know, places that this is available, do you feel like the leadership will stay the same in terms of, as Hernan was saying, you know, like when it goes to different, when it's launched in different places, there's an education part in terms of getting people to understand and value it. And I'm wondering, with your expansion, is it the same group of people who will be expanding so that you keep the principle stays the same in terms of people think alike about what those definitions and aligning things are? Or do you think you'll have to go through that process of also getting more people on board in terms of having the same politics and same ways of thinking about expanding it and being a part of Funky Fridge?
So I will always be running Funky Town Fridge. Like I'm gonna always lead it and run it. I have fridge captains who, like, that's just like one specific person to that fridge that I can call and say, like, hey, can you come clean it real quick, or it needs a deep clean or something is going on. And we sit down and just like figure out what the trajectory is and like what our goals will be for the next year. So the captains won't be changing either. As far as like volunteers and stuff, that's the point of us having the political education classes and just trying to educate people on who we are and the language we use and why we operate the way we do, to make sure that people align, and so they can have that option to choose, right? Because everybody doesn't agree. And if they don't, then, you know, they have that option to opt out and say, no, I don't want to be a part of this. And so that's also why we use education as a foundational pillar, to make sure that everybody stays on the same page. And then whenever they aren't, or they learn enough to say that, you know, that it doesn't align with them for whatever reason, then they can choose to not do so. I don't know, I hope that answers your question, but as far as the leadership, it won't change.
Yeah, no, I think it's a thought of like a great idea, and then how do you keep sustaining it? So thank you for sharing.
I still don't know the answer. we just winging it.
Amanda, can I ask you a little bit about what do you see? And I'm going to keep focusing on the higher education aspect of your work, but I mean, I feel free to also add other things you're doing, because obviously you worked in a very diverse, you know, setting that serves various needs. But I wanted to just ask you again about what's been the lessons learned, and what does higher education need to do in terms of responding to food insecurity on the campuses after what's learned here?
Yeah, so the pandemic, you know, I think that always we look for the positive. The pandemic really began to bring to light some key gaps within our food system. And that's already been spoken about, related to access to healthy food and the gaps that existed prior to the pandemic, and then just became significantly worse or just brought to light in the midst of the pandemic. And that's exactly what happened at a lot of institutions of higher education as well. The number one gap was, if you're not seeing students face to face, how do you find them? How do you know what their needs are? How do you know what, if they are falling off a little bit? How do you know what support they need? Do they need housing? Do they need food? What basic needs are not being met for these students? And if the institution of higher education doesn't have an office on campus already designated for those resources of basic needs, such as food, housing, and basic clean water, then those institutions were the ones that had the highest challenges in trying to reach students' basic needs during the pandemic, because students then, instead of talking to their professor after class, they didn't know where to turn. They're at home, they're miles away from the core university campus. what website do they go to? Who do they talk to when they need help with housing or with food resources? And a lot of times these students were first generation college students, students that were previously within the foster system. And so they didn't have support systems to maybe fall back on that some other students might have. And so one really advantage to this time is that a lot of institutions of higher education developed those offices. They developed some staff person at the university, at the administration level that was responsible for food and housing for students. And then they educated students where to go if they needed those resources. But then we also decreased the stigma of students accessing those resources because so many students then needed them. And so it was just, we know that you all need these resources. Here they are, please access them. And we actually saw a huge increase in individuals accessing resources that maybe they needed the resource before, but they just weren't accessing it.
And the impact on, like reducing dropout rates and just being disengaged, I mean, that's probably immeasurable in terms of how much that's helped in terms of just having that navigator, that person who cares of the campus following up and helping you, because you're a student first in that setting and you shouldn't have to worry about these things. And that's what most other people with safety networks have. And for someone to have to worry about hunger in terms of studying biology or statistics or something, it's just crazy for most people to even like think about, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when talking with administration, using the word retention is helpful so that they get on board to invest in hiring that person. But definitely it keeps students engaged, and it really shows that your campus is a community of caring.
Thank you. Hernan, can I ask you a little bit about what are some upcoming goals or upcoming, where are you expanding and looking to expand and in terms of how the model works? And also just wanted to ask you about what other schools that want to emulate this model, what are some advice and strategies or support that you can provide?
Sure, yeah, I'll start with the second question first. It's, the main funders of our program is the child nutrition program, which is the reimbursable meals that are being served in the cafeteria. That works in Texas very well because there is some policy that allows that to happen. I know it differs from state to state, but the USDA, particularly over the last 10 years, they have really been pushing farm to school. So there are opportunities there. I can only speak about Texas and Louisiana a little bit more because that's where I work right now. And I'll come back to that in a second. But there's funding available through that. If we can leverage that, which all school districts have access to, and use grant money, for example, to kickstart some of these projects, a school setting can find themselves in a really good place as long as there is somebody who is pushing this initiative, right? And hopefully they don't leave. Oftentimes that's the sort of thing that kind of cuts the legs off of an initiative. The person happens to leave and the project isn't picked up again. But there is funding out there, particularly with the USDA Farm to School grant. The grants range from about from $50,000 to $100,000, and that's just one of the opportunities available. And there's a number of different types of grants within that range. And I think we need to just access them. That grant went from maybe a couple million to multi-million at this point last year. So there's a lot of funding available for it. And every year there are more projects being funded. So the opportunities exist. Now to your second question, I'm sorry, let me finish that thought. I think it's also important to really tie the gaps between food, our public health, and education, because oftentimes we see these things as disparate. Perhaps not the people in this room. I think we all see the connection, but other educators may not see that immediate connection, that a child is less able to learn if they're hungry or if they're not being fed nutritious food. That's a huge element to their success. So anyway, always honing in on that is also going to be key to success. As far as where we're going to continue evaluating so we can have that hard data for stakeholders. Sometimes that's what they want to see, but I don't want to neglect that photo voice project that we've done with the students, and really bringing the whole student, right? Taking them into consideration. It's not just about the hard numbers. It's really about having them feel fulfilled and alive and creative and excited, curious. So doing that. As far as our growth plan, we are opening up 3 farms this school year, in the one in Baton Rouge, in Fort Worth, and third in San Antonio. After that, we have a competitive application process within our school district. So it really depends on the schools that submit the best or the most competitive application to have a school farm at their campus. But some of the regions where we plan on moving into soon are going to be Houston, Tampa Bay, Florida. We have schools there already. And as soon as we have schools in Ohio and Arkansas, we'll probably be opening up school farms there as well.
Thank you all for such a wonderful, sharing your experiences and sharing just insight into the work that you're doing. And I hope we can share your contacts with others who have been attending if they have follow-up questions. I'm going to hand the rein back to Bob here.